Hi, I am Tofudon. Here is a review of Genshin elements, the corresponding meta, the problems that it faces, and how Hoyo can improve Genshin. I think the tiers on this tier list are self-explanatory, so I'll go straight to explaining my thoughts. First up, we have Hydro and meta breaking. With the release of Fontanian characters, I can say with absolute certainty that Hydro broke the meta. It is difficult to determine if there are any team comps without one Hydro character. The number of characters and the roles that each character can play destroys the game, in combination with its ability to be effective in collaboration with all the elements creates a force that cannot be reckoned with. Hydro is the most diverse and flexible element. Hydro can be used with Dendro for Bloom, then with Electro for Hyper Bloom. It can be used in Vaporize, Freeze, and Tase. Excluding Geo, we'll get to this later. It has DPS potential, sub-DPS stars, healers, and supports. The most obvious DPS is Neuvillette, who is easy to build but extremely effective in clearing both Overworld and Abyss. Other examples can be Ayato or Nilou. Sub-DPS like Xingqiu, Yelan, and Furina make Abyss a piece of cake. Healers like Kokomi provide sustains with great Hydro application. On top of that, characters like Mona and Furina have amazing buffs that can take your team to new heights. I rest my case for Hydro here. Dendro, it's stupid. I think I can stop here for Dendro. Moving on. I'm kidding. It checks off the same boxes that Hydro does. Great reactions and great characters. The thing that makes Dendro shine is its ability to promote a stat that was not regarded highly before. Elemental Mastery. Not only did it introduce meaningful reactions that reinvigorated the game with even better gameplay, it gave purpose to a somewhat neglected stat in the game and made it much more important. Here I think we should mention how Genshin's meta has changed displays of character damage with buffs to collaborative damage using elemental reactions. In the old days, we had a DPS that used buffs from characters like Mona or Bennett, not to say this is outdated or not used in today's Genshin. But ever since Kazuha spearheaded the idea of using elemental reactions like Swirl to increase character damage, players began to use the elements themselves to do damage more frequently. In the editing Tofudon here, I understand the point about the change in the use of elements as a method of amplifying damage is a bit confusing. I will likely make a video about this sometime soon, so if you want to see what I mean by that, please stay tuned. Let me know if you have any suggestions on how to improve my content, and I'll do my best. Thanks. Continuing on to the very good tier where we have Pyro. I can smell the controversy. I believe that Pyro is just as good as Hydro. But the number of characters who are truly extraordinary and the disappointment with characters that had so much potential but failed makes it less impactful than Hydro. Characters and their roles, DPS Hu Tao, Liney, and of course the queen herself Arlecchino, super powerful in every sense of the word. Sub-DPS, Zhangling, also super good, and the 6-star Bennett. Reactions melt, vaporize, overload, all powerful. Clearly, very strong both in Abyss and the Overworld. However, we just cannot compare it to the strength of Hydro and Dendro in the current meta. With the release of Arlecchino, it is possible she is as important to Pyro as Neuvillette is to Hydro, but I do not think she can make up the lackluster nature of characters that miserably fail in Pyro, such as, in my opinion, Yoimiya, Diluc, Yanfei, Xinyan, and the worst of them all, Dehya. The next tier? Good. This one truly hurts me as it is my personal favorite element, Anemo. While Anemo has DPS characters like Xiao and Scaramouche, they are extremely niche or just not viable in the current meta. DPS characters in the current meta use their normal attack, charged attack, and elemental skills rather than their elemental bursts. This leaves characters whose main damage from their burst at the disadvantage. However, we can't disregard Anemo's trump cards, the Viridescent Veneerer artifact set, and its trademark crowd control. This set is what keeps Kazuha so powerful by fully utilizing the swirl reaction, even after almost 3 years. In all honesty, this artifact can be put on any Anemo character and used to shred elemental resistance. Crowd control used to be more powerful in 1.0 to 2.0, but it still remains very powerful and convenient for helping characters who struggle with grouping or prioritize single-target damage. Anemo DPS characters, which are pivotal in assessing the power of the element, struggle with a problem that I think should be addressed to a larger extent. Again, using Xiao as an example, Xiao uses support such as Faruzan, Xian Yun, and a buff either from Bennett or Mona. Swirl is simply not applicable here. The problem is that you cannot swirl Anemo. The fact that Anemo cannot even benefit from its primary elemental reaction severely debilitates its ability to find its place in the meta. Anemo used to be a lot more powerful than it is now, and it would be unfair to proclaim its superiority to other elements because of one artifact set, so it will remain in good until there are new characters introduced. Despite having the hottest women and being the catalyst to arguably the best reaction in the game Hyperbloom, Electro struggles to be more than a sub-DPS element. Its over-reliance on other elements, namely Dendro, keeps Electro from becoming more competitive in the current meta. Characters like Raiden Shogun, Shinobu, and Fischl excel at being sub-DPSs, but Electro's lack of characters that function as main DPSs, healers, and supports prevents Electro from being something more in the current meta. It's undeniable that it somewhat has a place in the meta with DPS characters like Keiking, Sino, and Clorind, but that is because of Dendro's strengths rather than Electro's. Up next is Cryo. Put simply, Cryo has 3 reactions: Melt, Freeze, and Superconduct. Cryo used to be in a comfortable spot in the meta when characters like Ganyu and Ayaka really shine thanks to permafreeze team comps and supports like Shenhei, but Cryo fails to be anything noteworthy in the current meta. It was replaced as the star of Abyss Clears and DMG showcases by Dendro. This may be the result of unfortunate timing because, as many players know, Sumeru came out after Inazuma. Inazuma was when Ayaka, who was the forefront of Cryo, was released, but when Sumeru released with characters like Tignari and Al-Hytham using the new Dendro element, it was only natural that these characters and subsequently the element declined in popularity. In the unusable tier is Geo. Despite having strong DPSs like Navia, Ito, and Chiori, good sub-DPSs like Albedo, the immovable shield of Zhongli, and Goru, the problem is the element of Geo itself. Geo has one reaction, Crystallize, which generates a shard that players pick up to deploy a shield. This does not buff Geo, neither does it promote collaboration between different elements because they all result in the same thing, a crystallized shard. Well, here we are with the most disappointing element in all of Genshin. I strongly believe it is a major problem that it is so easy to place an element in an unusable tier, and it heavily suggests that some things need reworking. There are countless videos on what a rework of Geo would look like, but I think it should operate something like the following. If the player applies Geo and Hydro, instead of collecting a Geo shard, it generates a mud-like reaction that slows down movement, and if Pyro is applied, it creates an effect similar to Zhongli's burst that petrifies. It would decrease enemy damage resistance by some percentage that keeps things balanced. If the player applies Geo and Hydro, but uses Dendro, it creates a bigger Bloom seed that amplifies Bloom reaction damage by some percentage. If the player applies Geo and Anemo, it increases Geo application for the reactions above in a dust storm. I guess those are all my thoughts on the elements in the current meta. I'm not sure what my next video will be, but I'll be posting again. So I'll probably see you soon. Thanks.